I was standing in my driveway at 7 in the morning, coffee in hand, when Patricia Whitmore marched across the street with a clipboard clutched to her chest, like it was the Constitution itself. The HOA president had that look on her face, the one that meant someone was about to have their day ruined, and apparently today I was the lucky winner. "Franklin Everett," she announced, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "I need to speak with you about a serious violation." I took a sip of my coffee and waited. I had lived in Meadowbrook Estates in Henderson, Nevada for 3 years now, and I had learned that the best way to deal with Patricia was to let her tire herself out first. She was in her early 50s, with blonde hair always styled in the same severe bob, and she wore pantsuits like they were armor. "I documented footprints," she said, flipping through pages on her clipboard. "Multiple footprints in the common area near the walking path. They lead directly from your property." I stared at her. "Footprints?" "Yes, footprints in the decorative gravel. It is clearly stated in Section 12, Paragraph 4 of the HOA bylaws that residents must use designated pathways only and must not disturb the landscaping elements." "Patricia, it rained 2 days ago. The gravel was wet. I walked to the mailbox." She made a mark on her clipboard. "That is not an acceptable excuse. The fine is $250, and if the violation is not corrected within 48 hours, it will increase to $500. My jaw tightened. $250 for walking to get my mail. I had dealt with her petty complaints before. The time she tried to fine me for leaving my trash cans out 15 minutes past the designated time, or when she measured my grass and claimed it was a 1/4 inch too long. But this was crossing a line. "You cannot be serious." "I am completely serious, Mr. Everett. The rules exist for a reason. If we allow one person to disregard them, the entire community suffers." She tore off a yellow carbon copy citation and held it out to me. "You have been formally notified. The fine will be added to your HOA dues at the end of the month." I took the paper, and she turned on her heel and walked away, her sensible shoes clicking on the pavement. I stood there for a long moment, reading the ridiculous citation, feeling my blood pressure rising with each word. That was when I decided enough was enough. I went inside, sat down at my kitchen table, and pulled out my laptop. If Patricia wanted to play the rule enforcement game, I would show her exactly how that game was played. I had noticed things around the neighborhood over the past few months, little violations here and there that I had ignored, because I was not the kind of person who went around reporting people for minor infractions. But Patricia clearly operated by different rules. I started making a list. It did not take long. First, there was the fence. Patricia had installed a 6-foot privacy fence around her backyard last summer. According to the HOA bylaws that she loved to cite, any fence over 5 feet required written approval from the Architectural Review Committee, and the homeowner had to submit detailed plans 30 days in advance. I had never seen any notice about her fence posted in the community newsletter. Second, her mailbox. The HOA required all mailboxes to be standard black, but Patricia had painted hers a deep burgundy with gold trim. I remembered because she had told everyone at a meeting that she wanted her property to stand out. Third, and this was a big one, she was running a business out of her home. She had a whole consulting operation going, with clients coming and going at all hours. The HOA covenant specifically prohibited home-based businesses that generated traffic. I had seen at least 3 different cars parked in front of her house every week, people in business attire carrying briefcases and laptops. Fourth, her front yard landscaping. We had strict water conservation rules in Henderson, and the HOA required drought-resistant plants. Patricia had installed a lush green lawn that she watered every single day, using at least 3 times the allocated water budget. The sprinklers ran for hours. Fifth, outdoor storage. She had a shed in her side yard that was visible from the street. The bylaws stated that any outdoor storage structure had to be completely screened from view. Hers was not. Sixth, her exterior paint. She had repainted her house trim from white to cream without getting architectural approval. Every exterior change required committee review. Seventh, holiday decorations. It was January 5th, and she still had Christmas lights up. The bylaws required all holiday decorations to be removed within 1 week of the holiday. We were well past that deadline. Eighth, parking. She regularly parked her car in the street overnight, which was prohibited except for guests. Ninth, her trash cans. The same trash cans she was always complaining about everyone else's. They were visible from the street, stored on the side of her house where anyone could see them. The rules required them to be stored in a garage or behind a complete screen. 10th, and this was the one that really got my attention, she had converted her garage into a home office. I could see through the windows when I walked by. That meant she had no covered parking for her vehicle, which was a direct violation of the covenant. Every home was required to maintain garage parking capability. I sat back and looked at my list. 10 violations. 10 clear, documentable violations of the same rules she was using to fine me for footprints in the gravel. I spent the next 2 hours taking photographs. I walked through the neighborhood with my phone, carefully documenting each violation. I made sure to get clear shots with timestamps. I took pictures of her fence from multiple angles, showing its height. I photographed her mailbox up close. I got shots of her lawn and sprinkler system running. I captured the shed, the house trim, the Christmas lights, her car parked on the street, the visible trash cans, and through her front window, I got a clear picture of her converted garage space with a desk, filing cabinets, and computer equipment where her car should have been. Then I did something else. I went to the county records office website and pulled up the permit history for her address. There was no permit for the fence. There was no permit for the garage conversion. In Henderson, converting a garage to living space required a building permit and city approval. She had done neither. This was bigger than HOA violations now. She had broken actual city codes. I called the Henderson Building and Safety Department. A woman named Carol answered. "Hi, I need to report an unpermitted structure and an illegal garage conversion," I said. "What is the address?" I gave her Patricia's address. "And what is the nature of the violation?" The homeowner installed a 6-foot fence without a permit and converted their garage into an office space without pulling permits or getting inspections. There is no covered parking being maintained. Thank you. We will send an inspector out within 5 business days. Can I get your contact information? I provided my details and hung up. Then I called the Henderson Code Enforcement Office and reported the water waste, the visible storage, and the long-term holiday decorations. But I was not done yet. I pulled out the HOA bylaws and read through them carefully. There was a procedure for reporting violations. Any homeowner could submit a formal complaint to the board, and the board was required to investigate and respond within 30 days. I drafted a formal complaint letter, attached all my photographs, and included citations to the specific bylaw sections Patricia was violating. I printed 3 copies, one for Patricia as HOA president, one for Mark Chen, who was the vice president, and one for Susan Rodriguez, who was the treasurer. Then I drove to the UPS store and sent all 3 via certified mail with return receipt. I wanted documentation that they had received my complaints. When I got home, There was another citation on my door. This one was for having my garage door open for more than 30 minutes while I was cleaning it out last weekend. Another $200 fine. I crumpled it up and threw it in the recycling bin. 2 days later, I got the return receipts. All 3 board members had signed for my letters. That same afternoon, my doorbell rang. It was Mark Chen, and he looked uncomfortable. "Franklin, can we talk?" "Sure." Mark was in his 40s, an accountant who had gotten roped into the HOA board because no one else wanted to do it. He was actually a reasonable guy, but he let Patricia run the show because it was easier than fighting with her. "I got your complaint letter," he said. "Look, this is awkward, but Patricia is really upset. I am sure she is. She says you are retaliating because she cited you for legitimate violations." I pulled out my phone and opened my photo gallery. "Mark, look at these pictures. Look at this fence. It is over the height limit and there is no approval on record. Look at this garage. She converted it without permits. That is illegal at the city level, not just HOA. Look at her mailbox. Look at her lawn. Look at all of this." Mark looked through the photos and his expression changed from uncomfortable to concerned. "I did not know about most of this. She has been ignoring the rules while enforcing them against everyone else. She tried to fine me $250 for footprints, Mark. Footprints." He rubbed his face. "Okay, I see your point, but you called the city on her. She broke city codes. That is not an HOA matter anymore. That is a legal issue. If she has an unpermitted garage conversion, that affects property values, insurance, liability. What if there is a fire and someone gets hurt in that space? What if her homeowner's insurance does not cover it because it is not permitted? That affects all of us." Mark nodded slowly. "You are right. I will talk to the board. We need to meet about this. The bylaws say you have 30 days to investigate and respond. I know, we will handle it." He left, and I waited. The next day, a city inspector showed up at Patricia's house. I watched from my living room window as a man in a Henderson building and safety polo shirt walked around her property with a tablet, taking notes and photographs. He spent extra time looking at the fence and peering into the garage windows. The inspection took almost an hour. Patricia came home while he was still there. I could not hear what they were saying, but I could see her gesturing angrily. The inspector remained calm, showed her something on his tablet, and handed her papers. She stood in her driveway after he left, staring at the documents, her face red. That evening, I got an email from Mark. The HOA board was calling an emergency meeting for the following Tuesday to address my complaint. All homeowners were invited to attend. Tuesday came, and the community center meeting room was packed. Word had gotten around that there was drama, and people loved drama. I arrived 15 minutes early and took a seat in the front row. Patricia was already there, sitting at the board table with Mark and Susan. She would not look at me. Mark called the meeting to order at 7 p.m. sharp. "Thank you everyone for coming. We have some serious matters to discuss tonight regarding rule enforcement and compliance." Patricia cut in. "Before we begin, I want to state for the record that I believe this meeting is a waste of time and resources. We have one disgruntled homeowner who is upset about being held accountable for his violations, and he is trying to create a distraction by making false accusations." I raised my hand. "Point of order. My accusations are not false and I have documentation for everything." Mark nodded. "Franklin has submitted a formal complaint with supporting evidence. Patricia, as the complaint involves you directly, I think you should recuse yourself from this discussion." "Absolutely not. I am the president of this board." Susan spoke up for the first time. She was a quiet woman in her 60s who rarely said much at meetings. "Patricia, Mark is right. This is a conflict of interest. You cannot investigate yourself." This is ridiculous. It is procedure, Mark said firmly. Please step down from the table. Patricia's mouth became a thin line, but she stood up and moved to a seat in the audience. She sat with her arms crossed, glaring at me. Mark pulled up the photos I had submitted on his laptop and projected them onto the screen. Let us go through these one by one. First, the fence. According to our records, there was no architectural review application submitted for this fence. Patricia, did you get approval for this? I did not think I needed it. It is my property. The bylaws are clear. Any fence over 5 feet requires approval. This fence is 6 feet. That is a violation. He moved to the next photo. The mailbox. Our standards require black mailboxes. This one is burgundy and gold. It is decorative, it adds character. It is still a violation of the standards. He went through each item, the business traffic, the excessive watering, the visible shed, the unauthorized paint color, the holiday decorations, the street parking, the visible trash cans. Then he got to the garage conversion. This one is particularly serious. Patricia, you converted your garage into office space without a permit. The city inspector confirmed this. You received a notice of violation from Henderson Building and Safety yesterday. Is that correct? Patricia stood up. That is my personal business. It is HOA business because the covenant requires every home to maintain covered parking. You cannot park your car in the garage because it is no longer a garage. That is a violation. It is also a city code violation, which puts the entire HOA at risk. A man in the back raised his hand. What kind of risk? Susan answered. If one homeowner has unpermitted structures, it can affect our insurance rates and the resale values of all our homes. It also sets a precedent. If the president does not have to follow the rules, why should anyone else? There were murmurs of agreement around the room. Patricia's face was scarlet. This is a witch hunt. Franklin is manipulating all of you because he does not want to pay his fines. I stood up. I am happy to pay legitimate fines, but footprints in gravel after a rainstorm is not a legitimate violation. It is harassment. You have been using your position to target people you do not like while ignoring your own violations. That is an abuse of power. How dare you? How dare I what? Hold you to the same standards you hold everyone else to. You tried to fine me $250 for walking to my mailbox. You have 10 documented violations, and at least 2 of them are illegal at the city level. If anyone should be paying fines, it is you. The room erupted. People started talking over each other. Someone said they had received ridiculous citations from Patricia too. A woman named Jennifer stood up and said Patricia had threatened to fine her $500 because her teenager's car had a small dent in the bumper, claiming it was an eyesore vehicle. Another man said Patricia had cited him for having a wreath on his door past Christmas, but she still had her full light display up in January. Mark banged a gavel on the table. Order, please. One at a time. For the next 45 minutes, homeowner after homeowner shared stories of Patricia's overzealous enforcement. A picture emerged of someone who had been using her position to bully people, making up violations or enforcing rules selectively based on personal grudges. Through it all, Patricia sat in silence, her arms crossed, her expression stone. Finally, Mark called for quiet again. Based on the evidence presented and the testimony we have heard tonight, I am making a motion that Patricia Whitmore be removed as HOA president, effective immediately, for abuse of power and failure to comply with the same rules she has been enforcing against others. Susan seconded the motion. All in favor, nearly every hand in the room went up. The motion passes. Patricia, you are removed from your position. We will hold elections for a new president next month. Patricia stood up, her face shaking with rage. "You cannot do this. I have dedicated 5 years to this community." "And we appreciate that," Mark said. "But you have also abused your authority. This is the right decision." She grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. After the meeting, several neighbors came up to thank me. Jennifer, the woman with the teenager's dented car, shook my hand. "I am so glad someone finally stood up to her. She has been making everyone miserable." "Someone had to," I said. Mark approached me as the room cleared out. "Franklin, I owe you an apology. I should have paid more attention to how Patricia was operating. I let her run things because it was easier, but that was wrong. Appreciate that, Mark. For what it is worth, your citations are voided, no fines. Thank you." I went home that night feeling like maybe justice still existed in the world. But I should have known Patricia would not let this go quietly. The next morning, I found dog feces smeared on my mailbox. I did not have a dog, and neither did my immediate neighbors. I cleaned it up and installed a security camera pointing at my front yard. 2 days later, my trash cans were knocked over in the middle of the night, garbage strewn across my driveway. The camera caught a figure in dark clothing doing it around 2 a.m., but the image was not clear enough to identify them. Still, I had a pretty good idea who it was. I called the Henderson Police non-emergency line and filed a report. The officer who came out looked at my camera footage and took my statement. "You think it is this former HOA president?" he asked. "I do not have proof, but the timing is suspicious. We will keep the report on file. If it happens again, call us right away." It did happen again. 3 days later, someone slashed my car tire while it was parked in my driveway. This time, my camera caught a better image. It was definitely a woman, average height, wearing a black hoodie and yoga pants. The way she moved, the way she hurried back across the street, it was Patricia. I called the police again. This time, they sent Detective Raymond Kim from the Property Crimes Division. He was in his 30s, sharp-eyed and thorough. "Show me the footage," he said. I pulled it up on my laptop. He watched it 3 times, zooming in on different parts. "That is definitely vandalism. Do you have any footage that shows her face?" "Not clearly. But I know it is my neighbor, Patricia Whitmore. She lives right across the street. The one you had removed from the HOA board. You heard about that, small community. Word gets around." He made notes on his tablet. "Do you have any other evidence connecting her to these incidents?" I showed him the timeline. The dog feces the day after she was removed, the trash the following week, now the slashed tire. "That is a pattern," he said. "Let me talk to her." We walked across the street together. Detective Kim knocked on Patricia's door. She opened it, saw me standing behind the detective, and her expression hardened. "Can I help you, Mrs. Whitmore? I am Detective Kim with Henderson Police. I need to ask you some questions about vandalism that occurred last night." "I do not know anything about any vandalism." "Where were you last night between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m.? "I was home, asleep." "Anyone who can verify that?" "I live alone, but I was home." "Do you own a black hoodie and black yoga pants?" Her eyes flickered. "Probably. Lots of people do." "Have you had any disputes with your neighbor, Mr. Everett?" "That is between us and the HOA." "Actually, madam, vandalism is between you and the law. Mr. Everett has security footage of someone matching your description slashing his car tire last night. It was not me. Would you be willing to provide a voluntary DNA sample?" She took a step back. "Am I being accused of something?" "Not yet. But I am investigating several incidents of vandalism and harassment. If you are innocent, a DNA sample would clear you. I am not providing anything without a lawyer." "That is your right." He handed her his card. "If you think of anything that might help my investigation, give me a call." We walked back to my house. Detective Kim said, "Her reaction tells me a lot. An innocent person would be more cooperative, but we need solid evidence. Keep your cameras running. If anything else happens, call me directly." He wrote his cell number on the back of another card. "What about the tire?" "File a claim with your insurance. Take photos for documentation. Save the tire in case we need it for evidence later." I did as he suggested. Over the next week, nothing happened. I started to think maybe Patricia had been scared straight by the police visit, but I was wrong. The following Saturday, I came home from grocery shopping to find my front window broken. A rock was sitting in my living room, surrounded by shattered glass. My camera had caught everything. The footage showed Patricia walking up my driveway at 2 in the afternoon, looking around to make sure no one was watching, then picking up a landscaping rock from my own garden and hurling it through my window. She had not bothered to wear a disguise this time. Her face was clearly visible. I called Detective Kim immediately. He arrived within 30 minutes. "I got her," I said, pulling up the footage. He watched it once, then nodded. "That is clear as day. That is felony vandalism. I am going to arrest her. Right now, right now." I watched from my doorway as Detective Kim and 2 uniformed officers crossed the street and knocked on Patricia's door. She opened it, saw the police, and tried to close the door. One of the officers put his foot in the doorway. "Patricia Whitmore, you are under arrest for felony vandalism," Detective Kim said. "I did not do anything. We have video evidence of you throwing a rock through your neighbor's window this afternoon. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." She tried to argue, but the officers were not interested in debating. They handcuffed her and led her to the patrol car. As they put her in the back seat, she looked across the street at me, and the hatred in her eyes was intense. Detective Kim came back over. "We will need a copy of that footage for evidence." "Already saved to a USB drive," I said, handing it to him. "Smart. We will also need you to come down to the station to give a formal statement. Can you do that tomorrow?" "Absolutely." "Get that window fixed and keep track of all your expenses." You can sue her in civil court for damages. Patricia was released on bail the next day, but she was ordered to stay away from me and my property. A temporary restraining order was issued. I gave my statement to the police, detailing every incident from the initial HOA citation about footprints to the broken window. But Detective Kim called me the following week with news. "We executed a search warrant on Whitmore's house," he said. "You will want to hear this." "What did you find?" "Evidence of fraud, big fraud. She has been embezzling from the HOA." I sat down. "How much?" "We are still going through records, but preliminary estimate is around $60,000 over 3 years. "How did she do it?" "Fake vendor invoices, mostly." She would create bills from landscaping companies, maintenance companies, pool service companies. The HOA would pay the bills, but the companies did not exist. The checks went to P.O. boxes she controlled. That is why she was so aggressive about being HOA president. Exactly. She needed to stay in control to keep the scheme going. When you got her removed, you threatened her cash flow. That is why she escalated to vandalism and harassment. She was desperate and angry. What happens now? We are bringing in a forensic accountant. The DA is looking at multiple felony charges, embezzlement, fraud, filing false documents. She is looking at serious prison time. The next HOA meeting was somber. Mark presented the findings from the police investigation. The room was silent as he explained how Patricia had been stealing from us for years, using fake companies and false invoices to siphon money out of our collective funds. "We will be filing a civil lawsuit to recover the funds," Susan said. "We are also reviewing our financial oversight procedures to make sure this never happens again." What about our reserves? Someone asked. Depleted. We should have had over 100,000 in reserves. We have 42,000. Patricia stole the rest. There were angry murmurs throughout the room. We will need to do a special assessment to rebuild our reserves, Mark said. We are looking at around $500 per household. People were not happy about that, but they understood. The anger was directed at Patricia, not the board. Jennifer raised her hand. What about Franklin's expenses? She damaged his property. Franklin can sue her personally, Mark said. But given that she stole $60,000 and is facing felony charges, I do not know how much he will be able to collect. I am less concerned about the money than making sure she faces consequences, I said. She spent years bullying people and stealing from this community. She needs to be held accountable. The room broke into applause. Patricia's trial was set for 6 months later, but she took a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to 3 counts of felony embezzlement, 1 count of fraud, and 1 count of felony vandalism. The judge sentenced her to 4 years in prison and ordered her to pay full restitution of $63,800 to the HOA, plus the $1,200 in damages to my property. She sold her house to help cover the restitution. A nice family with 2 kids bought it. They were friendly and normal and did not care about footprints in gravel. The HOA held elections for a new board. Jennifer was elected president. She ran on a platform of common sense enforcement and transparency. One of her first acts was to amend the bylaws to require 2 board members to sign off on any citation over $100, preventing any one person from wielding too much power. I was sitting in my backyard one Saturday afternoon, about 8 months after everything went down, when my doorbell rang. It was Detective Kim. Hey, Detective. What brings you by? Just wanted to give you an update. Patricia Whitmore started her prison sentence yesterday. Minimum security facility in Jean, Nevada. 4 years. She will probably serve 2.5 with good behavior, but she will have a felony record for the rest of her life. Good. You know what you did, standing up to her, that took guts. A lot of people would have just paid the fine and moved on. I am not a lot of people, he smiled. No, you are not. Anyway, take care of yourself, Franklin. You too, Detective. After he left, I sat back down in my yard with a beer and thought about everything that had happened. I had moved to Meadowbrook Estates looking for a quiet place to live, a nice community where I could mind my own business and enjoy my home. Instead, I had ended up in a battle with a corrupt HOA president who had been running a criminal enterprise while terrorizing her neighbors. But in the end, justice had prevailed. Patricia was in prison. The HOA was being run by reasonable people. The neighborhood was more peaceful than it had been in years. I thought about those footprints in the gravel, the ones that started this whole thing. Such a small, petty thing. Patricia could have just ignored them or asked me politely to be more careful. Instead, she chose to wield her power like a weapon, and in doing so, she had exposed herself. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Board meeting next Tuesday. We are voting on a proposal to eliminate fines for minor violations like footprints, grass height within reason, trash cans out slightly past deadline, etc. Want to come show support? I texted back. I will be there. Tuesday came and I went to the meeting. The community room was less crowded than the dramatic meetings from months before, just the normal dedicated residents who actually cared about HOA business. Jennifer presented the proposal to amend the enforcement procedures, focusing on community building rather than punishment. We are not eliminating rules, she said, but we are eliminating the nickel and diming that makes people hate living here. If someone's grass is a little long because they went on vacation, we will send a friendly reminder, not a fine. If someone leaves their trash cans out an extra hour, we will assume they forgot, not that they are criminals. We will save the serious enforcement for serious violations, things that actually affect property values and safety. The proposal passed unanimously. After the meeting, Jennifer approached me. "Thank you for what you did, Franklin. I know it was not easy. Someone had to do it. A lot of people were intimidated by Patricia. You were not. That made the difference." I shrugged. "I just documented her violations the same way she documented mine. I played by her rules. And you exposed a criminal in the process. The HOA owes you." "The HOA does not owe me anything. I just want to live in peace," she laughed. "Well, you have got that now." And I did. The months rolled by, turning into a year, and Meadowbrook Estates became the community it was supposed to be. People said hello when they passed each other on walks. Kids played in the common areas. Nobody worried about stepping in gravel or leaving their garage door open while they unloaded groceries. The special assessment was paid. The reserves were rebuilt, and the HOA hired an independent accounting firm to review finances quarterly. New policies were put in place, requiring board member training and term limits to prevent any one person from accumulating too much power. I ran into Mark at the grocery store one day, and he told me that 3 other HOAs in Henderson had adopted similar reforms after hearing about what happened in our neighborhood. "You started a movement," he said. "I just wanted to not get fined for footprints," I replied. But I understood what he meant. Sometimes standing up to a bully, especially one in a position of authority, can inspire others to do the same. Patricia had ruled through intimidation and fear, and once someone called her bluff and exposed her for what she really was, the whole house of cards collapsed. I thought about her sometimes, sitting in her cell in Jean, probably still convinced that she was the victim, that everyone had turned on her unfairly. People like Patricia never accepted responsibility. They always found a way to blame others for their own choices, but the facts were clear. She had abused her power as HOA president. She had bullied and harassed homeowners. She had stolen tens of thousands of dollars. She had committed vandalism and property damage when she lost her position. Every consequence she faced was the direct result of her own actions. I finished my 2.5-year wait, and one morning I saw on the local news that Patricia Whitmore had been released from prison. She moved to Arizona shortly after, probably to escape the stigma of what she had done. I hoped she had learned something from the experience, though I doubted it. Life in Meadowbrook Estates continued peacefully. I got involved with the HOA board as a regular member, helping to review policies and procedures to keep things fair and reasonable. We focused on maintaining property values and community safety, while eliminating the petty tyranny that had defined Patricia's reign. The story of what happened became a bit of legend in Henderson HOA circles. I occasionally got calls from homeowners in other neighborhoods asking for advice on dealing with overzealous board members. I always gave them the same advice. Document everything. Know your bylaws better than the board does, and do not be afraid to stand up for yourself. One evening about 2 years after Patricia went to prison, I was sitting on my front porch when a young couple walked by with a baby stroller. They were new to the neighborhood, had just moved into a house 3 doors down. "Hi," the man said, stopping in front of my house. "You are Franklin, right?" "That is me." "I am Tom. This is my wife, Rebecca. We just moved in last month. Someone told us you are the guy who took down the crazy HOA president." I smiled. "I guess that is one way to put it." We almost did not buy here because we heard horror stories about HOA drama. But then we heard what happened, how things changed, and we figured if a community could go through that and come out better, it was worth joining. "Welcome to the neighborhood," I said. "Thanks. Hey, we are having a barbecue this Saturday. You should come by. We are trying to meet everyone." "I appreciate that. I will be there." They walked on, and I sat back in my chair, looking up and down the quiet street. This was what a community was supposed to be, neighbors helping neighbors. Reasonable rules enforced fairly. No one weaponizing bylaws to settle personal scores or line their pockets. It had been a long, exhausting fight, but it had been worth it. I went inside and pulled out the framed citation Patricia had given me, the one about the footprints. I had kept it as a reminder that sometimes the smallest act of tyranny can be the thing that finally pushes someone to fight back. A reminder that documentation and facts can defeat bullies. A reminder that standing up for yourself can create positive change that ripples far beyond your own situation. I hung it in my home office, right next to my desk where I could see it every day. Footprints in gravel. $250 fine. That was all it took to bring down a criminal empire disguised as civic duty. The next Saturday, I went to Tom and Rebecca's barbecue. The backyard was full of neighbors, including Jennifer and Mark from the HOA board, the family who bought Patricia's old house, and several other people I recognized from community meetings. It was a warm April evening, perfect weather, and everyone was relaxed and happy. Tom fired up the grill while Rebecca brought out salads and drinks. Their baby was napping in a carrier, and a couple of kids from the neighborhood were playing cornhole on the lawn. "This is nice," Jennifer said, standing next to me with a plate of food. "This is what I wanted when I moved to an HOA neighborhood, community, not conflict. You have done a good job as president," I told her. "Things are better than they have ever been. We all did it together, but it started with you refusing to accept Patricia's nonsense." Mark joined us. "I got an email from the county this week. They finally finished reviewing all of Patricia's permits and code violations. She owed the city over $15,000 in fines by the time everything was calculated." "Did she pay?" I asked. "From the sale of her house." "Yeah. The county put a lien on the property. The new owners bought it clear, but Patricia lost even more money in the process." "Good," Jennifer said firmly. "She stole from all of us. She deserves every consequence." We stood there for a moment in comfortable silence, watching the neighborhood kids play, listening to the sounds of conversation and laughter. This was what Patricia could have had if she had chosen to be a leader instead of a tyrant. But she had been too focused on control and personal gain to see what really mattered. As the sun set and the barbecue wound down, I walked home feeling grateful. Grateful that I had stood up for myself. Grateful for neighbors who had supported the effort to remove a corrupt official. Grateful for a justice system that, while imperfect, had ultimately held Patricia accountable for her crimes. I unlocked my front door and went inside, glancing at the citation on my office wall one more time. Then I turned off the light and went to bed, sleeping soundly in a home I had fought to make truly mine, in a community I had helped to liberate. Sometimes the smallest battles lead to the biggest victories. And sometimes, footprints in gravel can change everything. The following months confirmed what I had hoped. The changes in our HOA were permanent and positive. The neighborhood thrived under Jennifer's leadership. She instituted regular town halls where homeowners could voice concerns without fear of retaliation. The board became transparent, publishing detailed financial reports quarterly and making them available to all residents online. More importantly, the culture shifted. People stopped being afraid of their own HOA. They stopped worrying that every small mistake would result in a fine. They started taking pride in their homes and community again, but for the right reasons, because they wanted to, not because they feared punishment. I ran into Detective Kim one last time at a coffee shop in Henderson. He was in line ahead of me, and we recognized each other immediately. "Franklin Everett," he said, shaking my hand. "How have you been?" "Good, quiet, which is how I like it." "I bet. Hey, I wanted to tell you we closed the books on the Whitmore case last month." Final restitution numbers came in at $67,000 to the HOA, $1,400 to you for property damage, and $15,000 to the city for code violations and fines. She paid it all from the sale of her house. And she is out now, released 3 months ago, moved to Phoenix. She is on probation for 2 more years. If she screws up, she goes back inside. "Think she will," Detective Kim shrugged. "People like that usually do not change, but at least she cannot hurt your community anymore." We said goodbye, and I took my coffee and sat by the window, watching people go about their lives. Patricia was gone. The HOA was healthy. The neighborhood was peaceful. Everything had worked out the way it should. But I knew that in HOAs across America, there were probably hundreds or thousands of petty tyrants just like Patricia, abusing their small amount of power, making life miserable for their neighbors. I hoped that maybe our story would reach some of those communities, would inspire someone else to stand up and say enough is enough. Because that was the thing about bullies, whether they were on a playground or in an HOA boardroom. They only had as much power as people gave them. Once someone stood up and challenged them, once the facts were laid out and the truth was exposed, that power evaporated. 3 years after the initial confrontation about footprints in the gravel, I was still living in Meadowbrook Estates, still happy with my decision to fight back, still glad I had documented every violation and followed through with the police and the board. Life was not perfect, but it was good, and it was mine. I never saw Patricia again. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she had tried to join an HOA board in Phoenix, but was rejected once they learned about her criminal record. She ended up working a retail job, a far cry from the power and influence she once wielded. Meanwhile, our HOA became a model for others in the region. Jennifer was invited to speak at a Nevada HOA conference about governance reforms and preventing abuse of power. Several other communities adopted our policies about oversight and accountability. And it all started because one woman tried to fine me for footprints in the gravel after a rainstorm, and I decided I had had enough. Sometimes the most important fights are the ones over the smallest things, because those small things reveal much larger truths. Patricia's citation about footprints revealed her abuse of power. My documentation of her violations revealed her hypocrisy. The police investigation revealed her criminality. And the community's response revealed that people, when given the chance, will choose fairness over fear. I walked to my mailbox that evening, deliberately stepping in the decorative gravel, leaving clear footprints behind me. Nobody cared. Nobody would fine me. Nobody would harass me. I was free to walk to my own mailbox without fear of ridiculous citations. It was such a small thing, but it represented so much. Freedom, justice, community, common sense. I collected my mail and walked back to my house, footprints trailing behind me in the gravel, proof that I had been there, that I existed, that I was home. And this time, that was exactly as it should be.